In this video, we talk about the Straw Hat Grand Fleet. We're gonna tackle the current members, what the current members could do after the war in Wano, and possible new members of the Grand Fleet. So, let's get to it. Let's start with the current members. We all know that they've separated since Dressrosa, except for the Barto Club that actually escorted Luffy's group to Zou. Sai and the Hapo Navy attended the reverie, and he even met up with the royals of Arabasta, Dressrosa, Prudence, and Fishman Island. So the ones missing from the actual manga, characters like Cavendish, Ideo, and the others, have appeared in cover stories. Well, Cavendish might have been interviewed around the Whole Cake Island arc. I'm not sure if I'm recalling that correctly, but I'm sure you get the point. It's been years since we've really seen them in action. Now, since this is the case, I think there's a pretty good chance that some or all of them could show up in Wano. Let me explain why I think this could happen. So, they all got a piece of Luffy's beaver card, right? Now, my theory is Luffy was beaten up by Kaido and was made to work in Udon. And in that time, Luffy's life force should have been reflected on his beaver card. Now, since the Grand Fleet each have Luffy's beaver card, they should have a decent idea about how Luffy is doing, provided they actually check on the beaver card. Because we never really knew about how Ace was doing up until we saw Luffy take Ace's beaver card from his hat. And then we all saw that it was burning up and significantly smaller than what it used to be. You might be thinking, well, who the hell is gonna be so obsessed with Luffy that they'd actually look on his beaver card every day? Now, let me just get this out of the way. I know 100% that even before I finished that question, you knew the answer. There is no doubt that the Barto Club would see it. They even have it in the center of their deck and enclosed in a glass cylinder, a la Beauty and the Beast style, right? Checkmate every single One Piece fan.
Gotcha, bitch!
I'm sure you knew the answer before I even finished the question. Press like if you did, and comment down below if I was right. Now, moving back, Bartolomeo could have informed the other Grand Fleet members before they ended up following the Beaver card all the way into Wano. I'm sure that other members could have checked on it too, maybe even accidentally, and this is why I think that the Grand Fleet could be coming to Wano. I'm sure that the Straw Hats could use all of the help that they could get, plus, it's gonna be perfect seeing the Grand Fleet in action along with the Straw Hats against a Yonko crew. That's just gonna be exciting. Another scenario could be that with Drake's report to Kobe, Kobe could have relayed this information to the higher-ups of the SHIELD organization, whoever those people could be. Kobe could have even relayed the information to the Marines, right? So the military or just the SHIELD organization might be forced to take action. And I wouldn't be surprised if Big News Morgans would hear about the Yonko Alliance and what Luffy has been doing in Wano, and he could have published it in his news. And this could be how the Grand Fleet learns about the whereabouts of Luffy. So they might eventually end up in Wano, rushing towards Wano because of the news, right? I believe that this is less likely to happen than the earlier theory of the Barto Club seeing the Beaver card and relaying that information to all of the other members of the Grand Fleet. And because of the incident in the Reverie, maybe, just maybe, Sai, the forces of Dressrosa, Alabasta, and Fishman Island could have been injured to an extent that they are left unable to help. So then, the other fleet members could arrive in the middle of the war and actually help out and turn the tides in the favor of the Straw Hats and their allies. And as far as matchups go, I'm not gonna get into too much detail for that, but I think that Hyruddin and his Giants would be a great match with the numbers, maybe even Black Maria. Cavendish should have a great matchup with a pretty notable character. Just to be frank, I think that Cavendish is the only Tobiropo level character in the Grand Fleet at the moment. And because of how strong he is and how he has been given an important role in the past, I think that he would match up with a Tobiropo level character. Now, Ideo would be a great fight against Page 1 if you really think about it. But I think that Page 1 would ultimately win that matchup. I might be wrong, and I'm totally open to that possibility, and I actually welcome it. I'm really hoping that I'm wrong, but anyway, I'd like to ask you this question. Do you think that Cavendish will pull a Sanji and get a crush on Ulti? Or maybe the other way around. Since ladies love Cavendish so much, if Ulti falls for Cavendish, I would really accept the fact that he's a natural panty dropper. Moving on though, there is a possibility that the Grand Fleet arrives after the war in Wano. And if that happens, well, I think it's mostly going to be for comedic relief and helping with the aftermath. You know, healing the wounded, rebuilding Wano, and most importantly, making Wano the headquarters of the Straw Hats and the Grand Fleet. Other than seeing the Sulong forms of Nekomamushi and Ino Arashi, this has been the thing that has really excited me. Just the thought that Luffy could have his own base of operations. Because when that happens, I feel like Luffy has become a full-fledged Yonko that is replacing Kaido from his seat as one of the Yonko. Yes, Morgans mentioned that Luffy is the fifth emperor, but in Japanese or Nihongo, I think that's gonna be pronounced as Goko. I think it's a ripoff from Goku, and in my opinion, that doesn't really have any ring to it. So I don't feel like it's going to stick. But regardless, after they beat up Kaido, I think that Luffy would take Kaido's seat and bump him off the members of the Yonko. Just like what happened with Crocodile, right? Luffy beat Crocodile, and Crocodile was bumped off the Shichibukai, and Blackbeard replaced him on his seat as a Shichibukai. But I would love to know what you guys think about Luffy starting to take territories for himself. Personally, I love the idea. I'm really raving about it, if it wasn't obvious yet from the previous statements that I made just a few minutes earlier. I want the Straw Hats to gain actual territory, but being realistic, since we previously saw Luffy take Fishman Island as his own territory, I really thought it was possible that this continues. But he didn't do that with Punk Hazard and Dressrosa, and that's when I started to think that this could be because of Luffy's personality. That's when it really sunk in that it might not be Oda's intention at all for Luffy to go around the New World and take territories for himself. I realize this now, and I don't even think that Luffy would take Fishman Island if it wasn't under threat of Big Mom. After this whole war in Wano, I think that Luffy would just make Wano as his base of operations, not really make it his own territory. I highly doubt that Luffy is into that kind of thing. I think that he doesn't want the responsibility. So stationing there and going back frequently might be the most that Luffy does. And maybe we could consider that as Luffy taking it as for his own territory, right? But that's as far as he goes. He could offer up protection to Wano because they're friends with the Scabbards and Momo. But that's it. It's kinda like how Shanks did to Fuchsia Village, Luffy's hometown. Just he just comes and goes and protects everybody and makes sure that everything's fine, right? So I do think that this has the best chance of happening. But let's move on to a different topic. Let's talk possible new members of the Grand Fleet. I see a lot of talks about new Nakama. I even made a video about it myself, but I don't really see too much talk about the next members of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet. So I decided to make one and include it in this video. Let me start off by saying there are too many possible candidates that could join the Grand Fleet. I'm gonna talk about most of them and only very briefly. So if I miss any and you think they are a great candidate for the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, let me know down at the comment section below and why you think so. Now, I'm gonna start off with the characters in Wano first. This one is very controversial, but I think that Kid has a decent chance of becoming a Straw Hat Grand Fleet member. I believe that Oda would rather have him rival Luffy for the throne, kind of like how Roger has Rocks, right? Because Kid is stubborn like that, so I'm totally expecting him to continue to rival Luffy. Now, in my opinion, I think the best candidate we have in Wano is Law. I believe that he could view himself indebted to Luffy because of what he did to Doflamingo. I know they made an alliance before just to take down Kaido, and after that, Law is basically free to do whatever he wants. But I do think that his major motivation in his life is to live for Rocinante. And now that he has gotten revenge for him, well, I believe that he could view Luffy as his actual friend, not just some pirate that he's in an alliance with. So I believe that Law is the best candidate for joining the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, but I also believe that he could be viewed as a rival of Luffy, but not like Roger and Rocks. It's gonna be more like Roger and Whitebeard. Roger wanted to be the Pirate King, wanted to find One Piece, and all of that. But Whitebeard wanted to have a family. And I think that's probably what Law would like to do as well. I don't really see him as the type that goes in search of One Piece, competing for the throne of the Pirate King. I really don't. So I really see him as a Whitebeard type of character. Now, it would be great to see the Scabbards join the Grand Fleet, but I think that Ashura Doji, Neko, Inu, and Izo have a legitimate chance of becoming actual Nakama. I do believe that the others would join Luffy once he needs their help, but that's much later on in the story. So I'm open to the idea that some of the Scabbards would be joining the Grand Fleet, maybe not officially, because Luffy already considers them as friends, right? The Scabbards are his friends, the Minks are his friends, and Momo is his friend. So I don't think that they would become official members of the Grand Fleet. I think that Marco might also be a great candidate to become a Grand Fleet member. Whitebeard respected Luffy, and obviously Marco and the other remnants of the Whitebeard pirates held Luffy in very high regard. It would make sense for the remnants of the Whitebeard pirates to become a part of the Grand Fleet, especially if they have any intention of giving Blackbeard a proper beatdown. Drake is another character that I think could join the Grand Fleet. Well, really, Shield in general. Depending on the actual goal of Shield and if they're independent of the world government, because we don't know a lot about Shield yet. But I think that they could ally themselves to the Straw Hats and basically become a part of the Grand Fleet, unofficially. More so because of how the members of Shield have basically the same kind of personality as Kobe does. There's no doubt in my mind that there's a chance, even if it's small, that they could join the Grand Fleet. Most of us probably consider Vivi as a Nakama. I do as well. I'm sure If we ask Oda, he'd say Luffy considers Vivi as a nakama as well. That's why the X marks the spot scene where they were all raising their hands that had the X, telling Vivi that they're nakama always while they were leaving Alabasta, makes this whole thing officially unofficial, if that makes any sense. She's a nakama, but she isn't. It remains to be seen how she would help the Straw Hats moving forward in the story. And with what happened in Marijoa, it could have involved the Arabasta Kingdom, depending on what Imu did. So if we ever see Vivi joining the Grand Fleet or Luffy's Nakama, it's going to be after at least we see what happened to the Revolutionary Army, the Dressrosa, Fishman, Arabasta, and Prudence incident in Marijoa. For the Fishman Royals, I think that they're basically a part of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet right now, seeing as their whole island was taken in as Luffy's territory. And because they were fine with it, right? So I think they're already a part of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet. Maybe unofficially, because the Grand Fleet was technically formed after the Fishman Island arc. Now, I feel like Bellamy won't be joining the Grand Fleet at all, but maybe we could see him later on in the story because of how his role is so small right now in the whole story, and it would be a shame remembering him as the guy that Luffy one hit KO'd twice. I highly doubt that that's going to be his only role in the story. Lastly, Shanks might ally his crew with Luffy's, but not exactly as a part of the Grand Fleet. I say this because he probably inherited Roger's will. He might even know about One Piece and the Void Century. The crew members or even Roger himself could have told him and Buggy about it. That's highly probable. I'm sure that everyone is at least open to that possibility, even if they don't think that's what really happened. Because I really think that's the only reason that Shanks is able to come and go in Marijoa. Because the Marines might be under the impression that Shanks was with the Roger Pirates when they set foot on Laugh Tale and learned about everything. They could think that Shanks saw what One Piece was. They might think that Shanks understood what the true history of the world was. Along with it, the island, or maybe even islands, plural, that were erased by the world government. Wait, it's actually plural because we have O'Hara and the island that we don't know about yet. Or maybe the Marines knew that Shanks and Buggy weren't with the Roger Pirates, but there's still a chance that they know about everything because Roger and the crew members could have told them that, right? So, this is just my reasoning. I can't think of another reason why the world government would allow Shanks to just come and go, seeing how big of a threat level Shanks poses to the world government. There's no reason for them to let him go. If it wasn't for knowing what the true history is, what One Piece is, and I would love to know more about your opinion down at the comment section below. Now, to wrap this whole video up on a positive note, let me just say that the Straw Hats and the Grand Fleet don't look like a Yonko crew yet. NANI? You might be thinking, you said positive note, but you're saying that it doesn't look like a Yonko crew. What? Trust me, I believe that it's positive, and I think that way because that would mean that the Straw Hats and the Grand Fleet would need to add numbers. That could happen as soon as after the war in Wano, meaning the current allies that they have in Wano plus the armies of Alabasta, Dressrosa, and Fishman Island could join the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, and after that, the fleet could appear like a full-fledged Yonko crew. You could argue that Luffy is more concerned with having quality members over the quantity, of their members, and I 100% agree. I just think that the build-up for Kaido's crew has been repetitive and it's been drilled into our heads for a reason. That's why I think that the Straw Hats and their Grand Fleet would be much better off having quality and quantity. So, that's all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Crush like if you did, as if you were Bartolomeo crushing your enemies with your barrier. Comment down below what your thoughts are about the possible new members of the Grand Fleet, and subscribe to the channel so it could grow, and I could continue to provide you with more of that One Piece content that you really, really want. So, as always, stay safe. Peace.